How do you remove a turtle if you find it entangled in a net? That's quite a question. It depends on your situation and your kind of resources, really. Often, you kind of have this situation when you find a turtle entangled in a net, there's a lot of panic because you just want to help the turtle. But actually, it's quite important to kind of step back a little bit, maybe record the incident because it will eventually become detangled. So maybe take a picture of the whole incident so we have that on record, we have that on file, and just assess the situation, because if the turtle is entangled, you potentially could become entangled as well. We suggest very carefully, because the turtle is it's going to be in a very stressful kind of situation. So approach it very cautiously. It's most likely going to be a flipper that's going to be entangled, probably a back flipper, maybe a front flipper. And it's just a case of getting some scissors and cutting that free. It's not something we're specializing in. We're not vets, and we can't give recommendations on that sort of stuff. But from our experience, you just want to get the job done as efficiently and quickly as you can, and simply scissors and some bit of manpower will generally help you out there. Don't be afraid to really get stuck in with the scissors, because often this here, it's quite thin, and when the turtle's struggling, it's very powerful. It's almost pulling the ghost net underwater, so it cuts into their skin very deep. So you really have to get in there and cut it. If you can't do it and you cut it, remember the turtle is just going to swim away really quickly. So just bear that in mind. They're threatened. Yeah. There's 5 species in the Indian Ocean, and they're all threatened to some degree. The Olive Ridley with the IUCN is classed as vulnerable. Critically is like the leatherback turtle. Yeah.
And a little bit on, or aren't they illegally?
It depends what country.
Around here?
Well, actually, there's a ban. You can't fish for turtles in the Maldives. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't happen. The Maldives do use FADs for tuna fishery. There's no really reported cases of entanglements, but they do use fishing nets, and potentially bycatch could happen. I know I was speaking to somebody who went out to the FAD, and he was speaking to some ministers in the Maldives, and they say they rarely encounter entanglements of turtles because the webbing, the mesh that they use on the FADs is extremely small, which is an advantage actually, because if you're using a big webbing dimension, it's very easy for a turtle to just put their flipper inside. Yeah. But in the Maldives, no, there's no catching of turtles really. But it might happen illegally somewhere. Yeah, is there a reason why it's Olive Ridley? Yeah, as I kind of said, we can't say for sure why it's Olive Ridley, but it's the characteristics and the behavior of the Olive Ridley which puts it at a greater risk than the hawksbill or the green. Like the hawksbill, for instance, adults, they'll spend a lot of time on reefs. In fact, they'll spend years on reefs, and you can see the same turtle on the same reef. So they're going to be quite close to kind of reef and shallow areas, same as the green, although the greens do migrate somewhat. But it's the characteristics of the Olive Ridley. They're highly dispersed around the Indian Ocean. They have these aribadas where even maybe 100,000 individuals will come to a certain area where there's heavy fishing. So it puts them at a huge risk of being entangled in ghost nets. So it's mainly to do with their behavior and their kind of characteristics which put it at risk. The bait nets. Yeah, it's a good question. If I'm honest, we've had no data from the bait nets that you guys use. So I wouldn't have thought it contributes too much, because I'd imagine your mesh size is going to be very small because your bait fish are very small. So the chances of entanglement in a bait fishing net, I can't imagine it's too much, to be honest. Yeah. When you look at the bigger picture and you consider these huge purse seine fisheries that are catching thousands of tons in one catch, I mean, that's where your problem is going to lie, these merchant ships as well. But yeah, I don't think it's going to contribute too much, although I don't have the data to say that. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, who knows if it's possible. I think the first step really is to kind of collect the information, because we don't really know specifically where these nets are coming from. We know the general area, but we don't know specifically it's this community, it's this species that they're catching, this is what's contributing significantly to ghost net production. So I think first step would be to collect the data, the information on the nets that we're finding, and also to collect data on the nets that they're using and see if there's any match and kind of relationship there. Also maybe a kind of a lost fishing gear kind of policy. They have to report any lost fishing gear on a no blame kind of basis. So if they report a lost fishing gear, they don't get blamed for it. There's no consequence, but they simply report it so that we can kind of keep track on who's losing what at what particular time and who's having problems. Because if we can kind of get to that stage, we can then start to help and maybe come up with alternatives or other ways of fishing, other methods. But at the moment, I really can't say. Yeah. I don't know about cargo. I mean, I'm sure they are, but no, it was the countries. Yeah, they do have to report lost fishing gear. They do also have to report bycatch as well, but it doesn't necessarily mean they do. So it's a kind of a bit of a lack of communication, lack of cooperation sometimes, that we don't really get the full data sets on who's losing what really. I'll just show you this. This fishing net here had a tracker on it, and it was a satellite tracker. So I thought, oh great, we're going to get some information here. We're going to find out exactly where that's come from. It had a serial number on it, everything, and I sent it off to the relevant organizations that look after this sort of thing. And I'm still waiting for an answer. I don't know nobody knows where it's come from. So people are following regulations, but they follow regulations, but they follow their own regulations, if you know what I mean. So they kind of, all the rules are followed. I'm kind of not making sense, but all their rules are followed, but they do it in their own way. So it's kind of, yes, every tracker's got a serial number, but nobody knows what system they're using. So how are we supposed to get any information from it? It should be standardized sort of thing. Yeah, it's not internationally tagged. We don't know if it's an artisanal fish. It could be, because it's really small. But they're expensive. Trackers are expensive. So I wouldn't have thought a small-scale fishery is going to be spending a lot of money on something like that. So it's going to be somebody with quite a bit of money. But again, we've had no reply, so we don't know where that's come from.
And then maybe no one wants to get caught because they didn't report it.
Yeah, but well, actually,
No
yeah. I think generally, I'm not sure if that's actually in place, but they should have a no blame kind of, approach. Because obviously if there's a consequence, nobody's going to report it. I think with the IOTC, there's no consequence. If you report it, if you log it, you've done what you're supposed to do. But it's just the situation that they're in, the weather, the conditions. Often it just goes unnoticed. So it's difficult to keep track of. Yeah. Hi. In ghost nets, I've only got a few records of mantas. It's actually very rare for a manta ray to be entangled. That was from Guy from the Manta Trust, shared that information with me. I've got a few records of manta rays that have been entangled in ghost nets. It's very rare. Unfortunately, we've just not had any information on that. We've actually now developed, with the IUCN, we've developed a protocol to, when you discover a ghost net, to record what species are there, not just the turtle, because if you look at this video here, just find it. If you see this video there's a turtle entangled, yeah, that's entangled. But if you look all around it, there's so many other species there that are surrounding that ghost net. And if you look closer, there was actually a grouper in there that was entangled. But it was an unidentified grouper because it'd been there for quite a long time. So for sure, other species are being entangled. It's just a case of people reporting this information, which we don't have at the moment. But we're quite hopeful that as word gets out, people will start giving us that information. There's a little bit of information about bycatch. Bycatch is a slightly different thing to ghost nets, because bycatch is more kind of active with the fishing environment, whereas ghost net is more abandoned and nothing to do with anybody, really. And there's reports of sharks and turtles caught in bycatch, but with ghost nets in the Indian Ocean, with the exception of Charles Anderson's publication, there's literally no information. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very true. We often find in the ghost net, you can find species like the sargassum frogfish. Normally they're in sargassum that just floats on the surface and they can travel huge distances. Actually, they can jump ship and go into a ghost net and travel that way as well. But on the flip side of that, you can get invasive species. So species coming in from an area they shouldn't be coming in, and they hitchhike on these ghost nets. And yeah, they then come into ecosystems where they should not necessarily be. Again, no studies really on that sort of thing in the Indian Ocean, so it's something that we're trying to understand and record ourselves. But for sure, they can be habitats. Yeah.